Um, we are so grateful to have our very own Roohe Ahmed, who happens to be also an Olive board member. She leads our Middle Ground Upland program. So if you're in the Inland Empire area, you are missing out on an amazing opportunity for our community members to enjoy. They meet every second Sundays of the month at the Middle Ground Center in Upland. So please make sure you tell friends, family, whoever live in that area to join that program. And we're so grateful that Luhi helps lead it, and she's a great asset to our Olive community. Ruhi Ahmed is a registered dietitian with over a dozen years experience working for a healthcare organization as well as a nutrition instructor at a local college. She holds her bachelor's degree in psychology from UCLA and her master's in public health, specializing in nutrition from Loma Linda University. She specializes in weight management for adults and children and chronic diseases linked to nutrition. She's active in the Muslim community, serving on various boards and committees, and she's passionate about all aspects of well-being and just as passionate about a good cup of tea. All right. Thank you, Ruhi, for being here today. I think you would have to unmute yourself.
Assalamualaikum everyone, and welcome. Thank you, Zainab, for having me here. And I'm so happy to be here as part of the Wellness Challenge, because wellness isn't just one aspect. So wellness isn't just what we're eating. It's also our physical activity. It's our mental state, and it's also our sleep. And one more big thing that I know Olive is really helping facilitate is social connection. So we can't just compartmentalize wellness. We have to really look at it as a whole broad spectrum of aspects that are helping us or hurting us. But today, I'm going to be focusing on nutrition. And there's so many different things to talk about in terms of longevity. So I'm going to do my best to kind of condense it down. And if you have questions, feel free to ask. I'll mostly focus on those questions at the end. But if there are any questions that pop up and it's pertaining to what I'm talking about, of course, I'll talk about it.
For patients. So yes, we'll get started and talk about the nutritional aspects. And I know we have different faith groups here, but I know a majority are Muslims. So I just really quickly want to touch upon our Islamic tradition and what it talks about in terms of health. We'll touch upon the blue zones. These are areas in the world that a lot of research is being done on because folks that live in those areas actually do tend to live longer. So researchers want to know, well, what's their secret? Of course, genetics is a big thing, but what else are they doing? So we'll take a look at some of the tips that we got from those areas. Then we'll talk about health strategies and practical tips on what we all of our sessions, of course, are informative. Inshallah, hopefully the sessions are also fun as well. But what are we going to take away from these sessions? That's going to be the main thing. And I'm going to be honest, a lot of things we already know. But how do we take what we know to what we're doing? And what we're doing to who we are, right? So habits become a part of our identity. So how do we bring this into our habits and then part of, again, who we are? So in our Islamic tradition, we see in our Quran a lot of mention about the value of nutrition and what we're eating. So just some quick verses here that we see, eat and drink, but avoid excess. And that's something that we definitely see a lot nowadays, is just an excessive consumption of food, excessive consumption of calories. People, eat what is good and lawful from the earth. So that's also really important, is not just good tasting food, of course, but what's lawful, but also lawful isn't just, halal and haram, but also the quality of the food. And that's something really interesting also to take note of these days as we're seeing this proliferation of foods. You who believe, eat the good things we have provided for you and be grateful to God if it is Him that you worship. So of course, having that gratitude for the food that we're eating, and also being really mindful of the food, right? Slowing it down, being aware of what we're eating. We find a lot of times that people are eating when they're watching TV or they're now on their phones. but not really being mindful of that meal. So really kind of slowing it down. And that's also really important for digestion as well. Also, we see in our tradition a lot of mention that our Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, also talked about in various ways. So, verily, your body has a right over you. So, we all in our Islamic tradition believe that we will be held accountable for how we treated our body. And that, of course, also keeps in mind what we're feeding it. Ask Allah for forgiveness and health, for after being granted certainty, one is given nothing better than health. And how many of us realize and appreciate health when we're not feeling well? So really just, again, being grateful of that and realizing, again, that it is a trust. And then this next of these is also one that we hear quite often, but we don't hear the first part of it. We usually hear the part that, oh, 1/3 of our stomach for food, 1/3 for drink, 1/3 for breathing, but we forget there's a first part to that. So the first part is no human being has ever filled a container worse than his own stomach. The son of Adam needs no more than a few morsels of food to keep up his strength. Doing so, he should consider that 1/3 of his stomach is for food, 1/3 for drink, and 1/3 for breathing. So just keeping in mind that, first of all, we shouldn't eat that much, but when we do, again, keeping it moderate, right? And we always hear this term moderation. So we'll talk more about that later on. All right. Now, how many of you have heard of the blue zones by a show of hands? Just curious to see. Anyone heard about the blue zones? I can kindly ask everyone just to be muted. Hearing a little bit of background noise here.
Can we speak?
Sure.
I don't know about the blue zones, but I know a place in north of Pakistan, very, very right at the edge, which is called Kargil, Skardu, where the people have lead a very long life.
Yeah, so there we definitely see pockets all over the world. And that's kind of what the blue zones are. These are longevity spots. So places where
My phone disturbing you by any chance?
I'm sorry?
I muted. It was just some background noise. Sorry about that.
Sorry, everyone. I know we have lots of things to talk about and a lot of questions. So inshallah, we'll save those questions till the end, and I will definitely cover them all. But the blue zones, these are areas where we find people to live long lives. They're living into their early hundreds, and they're not just living into older stages of life, bedridden. They're active, vibrant members of society. So researchers wanted to know, okay, what are they doing? What are they doing? Now, as we know, a big factor, of course, is genetics. That is something that is definitely a huge role that we see play in longevity. But there are some also lifestyle factors. And this is something that I want to really kind of emphasize, is a lot of times people think, well, this is just in my genes. I'm going to get it. I'm going to get heart disease. This is just everyone has it. It doesn't necessarily have to be that case, right? 30% is our genes, but 70%, what really can move the pendulum in one direction or another, is our lifestyle. And lifestyle, again, isn't just what we're eating, right? It's that whole holistic aspect that I was talking about earlier, physical activity, right? Sleep, social connection, stress management. So some of the blue zones that they have done research on, and there are good books about this. And if you just go online, you just go to YouTube and you type in blue zones. So there's some good TED Talks by one of the researchers of that study that kind of breaks it down further. And it's nice to see that. So we have Okinawa, Japan. This is a group of islands off the coast of Japan. And this is where we actually find the longest living female population, interestingly enough. Another area is Ikaria, Greece. So this is in the mountains of Greece. Another area where we see some of the longer living male population is in Sardinia, Italy. So that's that little island off the boot of Italy. the Nicoyan Peninsula in Costa Rica, and then we have one blue zone in North America, and it's right here. It's actually in Loma Linda, Southern California. So if you keep going down 10, right, eastbound, you pass the 215, you come across Loma Linda. And interestingly enough, I actually went to grad school there, and it's very fascinating because this is a large population of Seventh-day Adventists. And Seventh-day Adventists, they are actually, due to their beliefs, are vegetarian, right? No caffeine. They have their Sabbath. So on Saturdays, everything kind of, slows down. And so we see the longest living population of North Americans in that area, interestingly enough. So what they found in these blue zones, and again, there are other areas of the world, I'm sure like was mentioned in Pakistan. So there are other areas.
Volume up, please.
Is also Singapore.
Okay.
I don't want to say a man-made, but due to their policies, have actually helped extend their population's life, interestingly enough. So what they found, some common denominators in these blue zones, is that people in this area, they tend to move naturally, like it's built into their day, right? They're not necessarily going to the gym per se, but they're just moving more. For example, in Okinawa, Japan, they sit on the floor. So just imagine going up and down, off the floor. Is activity. In Ikaria, Greece, they're in a mountainous region, so they're walking a lot up and down those mountains. In the Nicoyan Peninsula, right, they're still out cooking foods in a very natural way, so they're like rolling out their tortillas. So just even that physical labor. Now, I know here in Southern California, unfortunately, the way that our area is, in which we don't have that much mass transit, we do have to drive. Right, that's just the layout of the land. So in our areas, we do have to take that conscientious effort to get out and get moving in whatever way it is that we can do. But the thing is, in terms of move naturally, don't think of it just as exercise, right? Every half hour, every 45 minutes, every hour, get up and move, even if it's a couple of minutes, right? So we had this great session earlier right now for from 10 to 11 on activity. So that's really great to get involved in, but don't just say, okay, I did my exercise for the day. Now I'm going to sit the rest of the day. Get up, get moving, right? And research again has really very powerful results that we've seen, that if we were to get up every 30, 45 minutes, it really helps decrease blood sugars, circulation, blood pressure, so many more benefits. Also in these regions, they have the right outlook. So positivity, right? Sense of purpose, right? What are we getting up in the morning for, right? That's a huge factor. Right tribe. So it doesn't mean having a lot of friends, but it just means having some sort of social connection. We have a couple of people, one person that we can connect with, that we feel like is there for us. That's a really huge factor that can even lead into loneliness. And loneliness, unfortunately, does affect longevity negatively. And we unfortunately do see a lot more increased amount of loneliness, unfortunately, in our population. And then a big part also is going to be eat wisely. So we're going to be covering that as well. So as I mentioned, moving naturally throughout the day, walking, gardening. We find that gardening actually can help with longevity. You're out getting your hands in the soil, you're out in the fresh air, doing housework. So all this is a core part of the Blue Zone's lifestyle. Purpose, sense of purpose is huge. So the Okinawans, they call it ikigai. The Nicoyans call it plan de vida. So knowing why you wake up in the morning, right? This helps makes us healthier, happier, and can add up to 7 years of extra life expectancy. So I feel like Olive gives a purpose for many folks getting out there, having some activities that they can do on a regular basis. Downshift. So stress is a part of life, and this is a huge part of wellness. And last week's session was on stress management. So this is a huge part of longevity. And in the blue zones, these centenarians, so these people that live into their early hundreds, they have stress relieving rituals built into their daily routines. So the Adventists, they pray, the Icarians, they nap, the Sardinians, they have their happy hour. So what do we have, right? So a big part of our faith, of course, is, our prayers and, again, connecting. So that's a huge aspect also to kind of keep in mind. And then the 80% rule. So people in the blue zones areas, they stop eating when their stomachs are 80% full. They eat their smallest meal in the early evening. And that is definitely something that we see even research-wise, that our body is able to process foods better earlier on in the day rather than later on in the day. And if you think about our ancestors, right, they did eat. They were up and moving around earlier on. They woke up early and they slept early. So kind of incorporating that into our lifestyle as well. And we see this in our Islamic tradition as well, right? With the Fajr prayer and recommendation to sleep after our last prayer, Isha. So some of the lessons that we can pull away in terms of nutrition is having more of a plant slant, right? We don't need to have meat all the time. And I know a lot of times people think, well, if I didn't eat meat, it's like I didn't eat, I'm not getting my protein. We can get protein from plant-based foods. And if you think about our ancestors actually did not have huge amounts of meat in their diet. And even if many of you think about to how you were raised and how you grew up, meat wasn't a huge staple. And if you think about our meat nowadays, even the meat nowadays has really changed in terms of the quality of meat. Like if you think about chicken breasts, right? Chicken breasts of today are way more huge than the chicken breasts of previous eras, right? That's due to the hormones, right? Antibiotics, and that can trickle down and affect us as well. So kind of having more of a plant slant. So in a lot of these different cultures in the blue zones, beans, lentils, soy are really the cornerstone of their diets, and they get a sufficient amount of protein that way as well. Vegetables, fruit, and whole grains, they round out the rest of the diet, and meat is eaten in small amounts. It's like a flavor, right? It's like flavorings there. And I know for many of us, this might be a little bit difficult, to transition into, but just, do I have to have meat at every meal? Could I maybe limit it to 1 meal or 2 meals a day? And Ramadan is around the corner, and this is a great time to practice that. Also, as I mentioned, belonging, sense of purpose is huge as part of longevity. And being part of a faith-based community, interestingly enough, adds 4 to 14 years of life expectancy. And then also the right tribe. The world's longest lived people have close friends and strong social networks. And again, this is something that I know Olive is really trying to provide as well. So what do we boil down health success to? So health success is, this is in no particular order, by the way. So nutrition, what we're eating, because we are what we eat, right? That is definitely, we all know that, right? Whatever we're eating breaks down and becomes a part of our body. Physical activity, just movement, right? It doesn't have to be, again, us at the gym. It can be just, am I moving? Am I getting in my steps? And 10,000 steps, of course, is the ideal. But that was actually, interestingly enough, kind of arbitrarily set by some fitness tracker companies. What we see research actually show is we see benefits, a decrease in mortality with just even getting 5,000 steps, right? If we can bump it up to 7,500, that would be even better. But just, am I at least getting 5,000 steps? Maybe that seems like a lot for you. So whatever you're getting right now, can I increase it slowly? Maybe I can increase it by, 500 steps a week until you reach that 5,000 steps. Stress management is huge. It's really a cornerstone, right? Our mindset, right? Our attitude about things. And this does include self-care. And I know for many folks, self-care sometimes feels like it's selfish. But as we're going to see in a little bit, we can't take care of others unless we take care of ourselves. So include that self-care, and social connection also is a big part. And not just social connection through the phone, right? But having that face-to-face contact is very important. And then sleep. How is our sleep? Are we getting enough sleep? Are we having restful sleep? As I was mentioning, self-care is very, very important because you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to take care of yourself first. Like if you're on an airplane, right, and they're explaining, right, the whole protocol of what to do in case there's an emergency, right? What do they say when those oxygen masks drop? You put it on yourself first. Even if you have a child next to you, you have to put it on yourself first so that you are there and okay, the child or whoever is next to you. So same thing in real life. Now, a lot of times I'm going to be honest with nutrition. When people, they find out, oh, you're a dietitian, some of the first questions people ask me, I need to lose weight. How can I lose weight? And that's important. Yes, weight loss is definitely important. And our society really pushes, a certain way of looking, a certain way of being. But let's not just focus on the weight. I know that's easier said than done, but we have to really look at other parameters as well. What are my lab values? How's my cholesterol? How's my blood pressure? How's my blood sugars? Right? Really take a look at those as well. And then take your measurements. The scale is just a point in time. It doesn't tell the whole picture. What if I had a very salty meal the night before and I jumped on the scale? I'm going to gain some weight. And that's not necessarily weight in and of itself. That's that water weight. So taking your measurements is very helpful for those that would like to do that. You can take your waist circumference. So your waist circumference is the leanest, the smallest part of your body, right? It's a little bit kind of above your belly button. And we ideally want to see for decreased risk of disease for men less than 40 inches, for women less than 35 inches. You can also do waist to hip ratio. That's also really helpful too. So your waist is going to be the smallest part of your body and your hip is going to be the widest part of your body. And so you would divide your waist by your hip ratio, your hip measurements. For women, we want to see less than 0.7. For men, we want to see less than 0.9. Again, these are just ranges, okay? So don't get too worried, everybody. Because also what I personally always tell people is, well, how do you feel? How are you physically feeling? How are your energy levels? How's your digestion? Are you feeling bloated? Are you having headaches? Are you feeling tired? And how do you mentally feel? Because food is connected to mood and mood is connected to food. So it's like a two-way street there, interestingly enough. And that could be a whole separate segment. Maybe we can do one day. So don't get obsessed with the weight because that can be an added stress. And I'm going to be very honest and don't hate me for this, but as we get older, it does get difficult to lose weight because our metabolism is slowing down. Metabolism is how quickly our body is burning calories, and that is really connected to our muscle mass. And unfortunately, a part of aging is we do lose that muscle mass, but we can maintain it. We can do our best to kind of keep that muscle mass as much as possible, and it's never too late. We've seen studies of people in their 80s and 90s doing some resistance weight training and able to maintain some of that muscle mass. So get out there, get some of that strength training done. Even a couple of times a week is really helpful. And that's also really important for just activities of daily living, being able to be mobile, being able to be flexible, right? Being able to, can I bend over and pick something up? That's all interconnected. So some fundamentals to talk about here. If it came from a plant, eat it. If it was made in a plant, don't. So this is an author, Michael Pollan, who really has been looking a lot into this proliferation of processed foods. So foods are going to be processed, right? If we're eating beans in a can, they were processed, they were canned, a little sodium was added. And that is a sort of processing. And that's not what I'm concerned about. We are more concerned about ultra processed foods. So ultra processed foods are foods that have lots of ingredients. And nowadays you are seeing just an intensive amount of ingredients in labels. So you turn the label over, you look at where it says ingredients, you might need to use a magnifying glass. Sometimes they're really small. And see how many ingredients they are and ask yourself, do I understand these ingredients? Does this make sense to me? Is this something that I want to have in my body? And another good definition of ultra processed foods is, are these something that I can make easily in my kitchen without extra equipment, without extra, chemicals? So I always tell kids, I'm like, can you make your Cheetos in your kitchen? What are Cheetos made of? What are Toast Takis made of? So a lot of foods nowadays, we can't replicate that easily in our kitchen. So those will be considered ultra processed foods. And research does show that when we eat increased amounts of ultra processed foods, it does affect our risk of cancer. It does affect weight gain. And so much more that we don't even know. So really reducing that down. So if you take a look at the label, ideally look for a product that has less than 5 ingredients. And do you understand those ingredients? Now, if you're buying a bread that has like 21 grains, of course, they're going to list all 21 grains. So that label is going to look long. but you at least understand what those grains are. If you're buying something and there's lots of chemicals and additives and preservatives that we don't know what they are, again, we don't know the long-term effects in our bodies. Now, let's suppose you happen to buy a product that has more than 6 ingredients. Then in this case, check the first 3 ingredients. So within the first 3 ingredients, we want to avoid any sort of sugar. So I'm going to be talking about sugar coming up because there's so many names of sugar now that we see. So it's beyond just, table sugar or brown sugar or honey or molasses, anything with OSE at the end. Dextrose, sucrose, maltose, those are considered form of sugars. Any sort of salt or sodium, that could be sea salt, Himalayan pink salt, kosher salt. Salt is still salt. Fat, so that could be oils, that could be hydrogenated oils, that can be mono and diglycerides, different terms of fat, and enriched flour. If you see any of these within the first 3 ingredients, you would want to try to avoid them because ingredients are listed in order of weight. So whatever the first ingredient is, there's a lot of that. So let's suppose you pick up a product and the first ingredient is sugar. There's going to be a lot of sugar in that product. It's probably mostly sugar, so you would want to try to avoid that. Another good rule of thumb is eat like your grandparents ate, right? How did our grandparents eat? Not just what they were eating, but how often they were eating, right? The quality of their food. And one thing I really always recommend to my patients is track how you're feeling and what you're eating, because how we feel is connected to what we're eating. So are you tired? Are you bloated? Do you feel heartburn? Do you feel nauseous, right? Headaches. These could be associated with the foods that we're eating, but they can also be associated with lack of sleep. They could also be associated with stress. So just keeping a loose food diary, right? Just what did I eat today? What time did I eat? How was my stress on a scale of 1 to 10? Because unfortunately, stress can even affect the way that our body is digesting food. When we're stressed, we don't digest food as well as if we were in a more relaxed state. So that could be a big factor too. How much sleep did I get the night before? A lot of times, lack of sleep can actually affect our cravings. So if you find, wow, I'm really, feeling something like I want to eat something really sweet, it could be due to stress. It could be due to lack of sleep. There could be a lot of different factors that happen there. Because also when we're sleepy, when we have increased stress, it can trigger our body to have cravings. So these are all things to kind of track and see. Nutrition, we're moving in this direction. We're not quite there yet, but we're moving in this direction of personalized nutrition, where we'll be able to check people's genes and people's, vitamins and mineral deficiencies to see what foods affect us, because everything's different, right? Foods that I eat might affect me differently than foods that someone else eats. So until we're not there yet, we're not there yet with those tests and so forth. But until we get there, what's helpful on our end is keeping track of what we're eating. So maybe one day you realize, wow, I was really feeling very tired today, like very unusually tired. So think back, what was your day like? What did you eat? How was your food? How was your sleep? And sometimes we can start to see patterns that way. Now, for those that know me, and I did a session earlier about this, I'm a big gut nerd because so much of how we feel physically, mentally, actually goes back to our gut and our gut health. Because guess what, everyone? We have trillions of microbes that are in us and on us. And I know that sounds scary, but don't worry, they're supposed to be there. So the average adult carries 3 to 5 pounds of microbes in our large intestine, and they're supposed to be there because they're helping us break down undigested food. They help us absorb different nutrients like vitamins. They can help with our immunity. 70% of our immune system is actually based in our gut. They secrete different neurotransmitters that can affect our mood. They're looking at whether gut health can affect aging. So it's all interconnected. So we want to be good to our gut. And how do we be good to our gut? By what are we feeding it? So I'm sure you all have heard of prebiotics and probiotics. So prebiotics is the food for this bacteria. And it's not just bacteria. We have viruses, we have yeast, we have fungi, we have all sorts of goodies in our gut, and they need food to survive. And the best source of food is fiber, because our body does not have the digestive enzymes to break down fiber, which is perfect because then it ends up in the gut and then these microbes are munching away at it. Where do we get fiber? We get fiber from vegetables, fruits, beans, lentils, and whole grains. And we want to have variety. I know it's very easy, everyone, for us to eat the same foods every day. It's very easy to do that. But we want to have variety because with that variety, we see diversity in these different organisms. So let's suppose you always get, green bell pepper at the store when you go. How about getting the other colors as well? Right? Maybe you always get, regular orange carrots. Now they have purple carrots because the colors, the pigments also are related to the phytochemicals and antioxidants that are in there. And this again helps with diversity. I once had a patient who literally, he goes to the farmer's market, he gets all sorts of different fruits and vegetables, and he'll eat that, and he also blends it and also kind of eats that or drinks that to get diversity in his gut. Just a warning, that might cause some abdominal GI distress. So I wouldn't recommend that right away to just like blend all these different fruits and vegetables and eat them or drink them. It's always best to eat them. But if you really, have a hard time, if you want to blend some and have smoothies and things like that, you can, but just make sure it's more vegetable centric than fruit centric. And also watch what you're putting in there because smoothies sometimes can be an area where we get a lot of sugar without realizing it. So just be careful what you're putting in your smoothie. Now, probiotics, this is the actual bacteria itself. So we get probiotics in things like yogurt, fermented foods like kimchi, sauerkraut, tempeh, miso, even achar can be have considered to have probiotics in there, as long as it's made with salt, not vinegar. Kefir, kombucha, and even certain soft cheeses. So I can talk a lot about gut health, and I actually have, and I think we have the recording up through our Olive YouTube channel where you can learn more about gut health. Another problem that we also see a lot, especially as we're aging, is inflammation. And inflammation is also really connected to our gut. If our gut is off, if we have this more negative microbes and positive microbes, that can influence inflammation. Inflammation is also connected to stress, right? Lack of sleep, those keep popping up, don't they? Sedentary lifestyle. So we are seeing a lot of inflammation, and inflammation also does affect chronic conditions and longevity. So we want to take a look at what we're consuming and our lifestyle to bring down the inflammation levels. So some foods and practices that are very inflammatory is lots of red meats. So beef and lamb, goat, right, can be inflammatory. So if we're eating those things, maybe reduce it down, a couple times a month. Make sure it's grass-fed, right, organic, if we can get those. You want to reduce processed meats and processed foods in general, the ultra-processed. So things like hot dogs and, the cold
Luncheon meat.
that you would like to try to reduce. A lot of those have nitrites. And we found that excessive consumption of processed meats could potentially increase risk of certain cancers, such as colorectal cancer and colon cancer, which unfortunately are on the rise. So if you don't know what body parts or what animal body parts that processed food is coming from, maybe you would want to avoid it. Sugars, we'll talk more about that later. Refined carbohydrates, so enriched flours, you want to try to reduce. There are some theories about gluten and dairy. So gluten is a protein that we find in wheat, rye, and barley, so trying to reduce that down. Some people are affected by it, some are not. So it really depends case by case basis. Some people are sensitive to dairy, so reducing that or eliminating that. If we're not eating enough fruits and vegetables, this can increase inflammation. And if we're not getting enough physical activity, this can also affect inflammation. So how do we change the tide with that? So some of the things that we find that can actually help us decrease inflammation is fasting. And again, not everyone can fast. So if you have certain health conditions that prohibit you from fasting, please listen to your doctor. But for those that are able to fast, we have Ramadan around the corner. And we actually found there actually were research studies done during Ramadan time that people that fasted, actually we saw a decrease in inflammation. However, my friends, let's watch and be careful of what we're eating at iftar time. We'll just leave it at that. So we want to make sure it's healthy healthy foods, because that again can affect our inflammation levels. Lots of those fried foods, a lot of those red meats can unfortunately flip that into more of the negative zone. So fasting is helpful, and just lengthening time between meals, right? We don't have to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snack, 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 right? It's okay. We can go, 4 or 5 hours without eating and be okay. Now, again, for those that have diabetes, it might be a little bit different for you. So those that were given other instructions by your doctor or dietitian, please listen to them first and foremost. But just generally speaking, lengthening times between our meals is helpful in decreasing inflammation. Fruits and vegetables, more color, better, so variety. Omega-3s, these are essential fatty acids we find in fatty fish, walnuts, and flaxseed. These are anti-inflammatory. Having whole grains, but non-processed versions. So things like bulgur, barley, quinoa, millet, these ancient grains have been helpful in reducing inflammation. Herbs and spices, right? Spice it up, everyone. In many of our cultures, we're very blessed that spices and herbs are just part of our cooking. So bring them in. Saffron. Saffron can actually help with mood, interestingly enough. Turmeric can help decrease inflammation. Sage, ginger, chili peppers, black pepper. Black pepper and turmeric should go together. The black pepper helps the turmeric get absorbed. Green tea is very powerful anti-inflammatory. It has something called ECGC in it that helps decrease inflammation, physical activity, and of course, meditation and relaxation. Now, we're doing this in our health challenge, and that is using the healthy plate as a model. So really watching our portion. So the plate is actually a 9-inch plate. So we're doing a 9-inch plate, and half of our plate should ideally be some vegetables and fruit. 1/4 of our plate should be our healthy protein. And then the other 1/4, this is where our starchy vegetables go. So like our peas, our corn, and our potatoes actually go in this 1/4 of our plate with the whole grains. Having some water, using some healthy oils to cook with, right? This is some of the recommendations that we're seeing as a gold standard. So this is kind of what it would look like. And again, I know we're following this as our model in our health challenge, so this is really good to aspire to. So here's just an example here of loading up the veggies, my friends. That I know is very difficult for us, and it doesn't have to be boring, right? It doesn't have to be the same old, right? Sometimes you can do roasted vegetables. Sometimes you can just, whatever you're eating, can I just add more vegetables to it? Can I throw in some vegetables into my soup? Can I blend vegetables and add them to my dishes? Now, another big factor that unfortunately affects longevity negatively is sugar. And this is not, I'm not talking about fruits, I'm talking about added sugars. So this is sugar that was added in that wasn't already there in the first place. And that can even include natural sugars. So let's suppose you're like, oh yeah, I'm eating yogurt. It's like strawberry flavor. They just added sugar and strawberries. Yes, but that added sugar was not there in the first place. It's better if you have your own plain yogurt and then you added your you can add vegetables if you want. You added your fruits or you added your nuts. So you add your drizzle of honey rather than it already coming pre-sweetened. So really try to watch those added sugars that are coming in because unfortunately there is no good sugar. Sugar is sugar and there's no benefits to sugar other than it tastes good. So really watch the amount of sugars that we're consuming. The American Heart Association recommends for added sugars for women less than 25 grams per day. So that's about 6.5 teaspoons or less. For men, about 37.5 grams, that's about 9.5 teaspoons or less. So let's suppose you put a couple of teaspoons in sugar in your coffee or your tea, that's all adding up. Then you're having your pastry, then you're having your protein shake that has like added sugars in it. Like we need to kind of check to see where we're getting these sugars because this can drive inflammation and so much more. And excessive amounts of sugar can become fat in our body, also known as triglycerides. So when we're looking at the label, everyone, take a look where it says added sugars. Ideally, it should be 0. And when you see those added sugars, there's lots of different names for added sugars. It's very overwhelming, right? So there's rice syrup, there's cane juice, there's brown sugar. There's no good sugar. right? I'm going to be quite honest with you. The best sugar is the one that you can use the least amount of. Now, in our Islamic tradition, honey is, of course, a sunnah food. So I'm more partial to that. We also see antioxidants in there, but we want to go easy on it. So don't be like, oh yeah, this is a prophetic food. Let me just put it all over. We want to go easy on that too. And then when we're picking honey, ideally would be, the raw, organic, local honey. Dates, you can even just chop up dates and add them into our foods, right? We do see things like monk fruit sugar and stevia. The stevia and some of these artificial sweeteners, just be careful with, we don't know the long-term effects on our gut microbiome. If you have diabetes, yes, I know many of you do turn to those sugar substitutes, but in that case, you can use, the small amounts of the stevia, but try to use the least amount as possible. And I haven't done it, but usually I like to recommend a sugar challenge, which is 2 weeks with no added sugars to retrain the palate. It's not easy, but it really does help because a lot of foods, the more sugar we eat, the more our palates get used to sugar. And the more sugar that we eat, this drives the cravings for more sugar. So if you're reading the labels, my friends, just take a look at where it says added sugars. You would divide that by 4, and that will tell you how many teaspoons are in there. A lot of times that's more eye-opening rather than grams. I know grams doesn't mean much to us, but when we translate that into teaspoons, check it out. I have never done the analysis on desi mithai. I'm scared what we would see, but we want to kind of, again, tone it down. But of course, obviously moderation. We want to enjoy it too, but we want to look at what are we mostly eating. And this is just a quick template that might be helpful for Ramadan, for our suhoor time. We want to, and just in general, whenever we're having our breakfast, we want to make sure we're getting a good breakfast in, and we want to make sure it's balanced. So that plate method is excellent for lunch and for dinner, but for breakfast, trying to follow this template of a fiber-rich carbohydrate and some sort of a protein. And what I can do is I can actually share this slide on the olive thread, just so that those that want it can have it easily accessible. So you always want to combine, have some sort of fiber, rich carbohydrate, and some protein with it together. This is going to help us feel full for longer. So for longevity, my friends, here are some quick tips of foods to aim for regularly. We want to have a fistful of dark green veggies daily. So these dark green leafy veggies, kale, spinach, Swiss chard, romaine lettuce, all these different, you can even buy now like the Power Greens packet. So you can purchase that from like Target, they have it at Trader Joe's, at Costco, and you can use these, just saute them, throw into whatever you're eating. So a fistful of dark green veggies daily. And also what I would recommend as another fistful would be cruciferous vegetables. Things like broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. These are really good detoxifiers in our body. They can help detox our liver. And we see actually with broccoli, it can actually reduce risk of different cancers. Actually, all the cruciferous vegetables. So broccoli, cauliflower. I know these are gassy. I understand that. So small amounts. But those are also really beneficial too. Trying to have 3 servings, which is equivalent to 1 cup cooked of ancient grains daily. So this could be things like quinoa and amaranth and barley, bulgur, millet, oatmeal. But if you're doing oatmeal, not the instant oats, not in the packet, that's very processed. You would pick old-fashioned oats or steel-cut oats. So having 1 cup of these, any of these, mixture of these daily is also really beneficial. Having 1 serving, which is equivalent to half a cup cooked of legumes. So legumes are beans, lentils. I can throw soy in there as well. Daily or at least 3 times a week to start off. Having a half a cup of berries daily or at least 3 times a week. 1 tablespoon of ground flaxseed. You can add that a little bit, and it doesn't really have a taste. So you can throw it into your oatmeal, you can throw it into your salad, into your yogurt. So that daily or 3 times a week. Turmeric, the more the merrier. Right, but we want to have turmeric in its natural form, not necessarily in the pill form, unless your practitioner recommended that. When we have supplements, everyone, they honestly, I'm going to be quite frank with you, the supplement industry isn't really regulated. It's kind of self-regulated, so anything can be in there. And also, those are more stronger, potent amounts, and they may not be recommended for different medications or conditions that you may have. So for example, if someone has kidney stones or gallbladder issues, we wouldn't recommend turmeric capsules. So just always double check with your practitioner to make sure there aren't any sort of contraindications. A handful of nuts daily, so walnuts, almonds, whatever nuts that you like, ideally raw. So a handful of those daily, green tea daily. So these are all really beneficial. And some research is also indicating, and I would probably even add mushrooms, like cooked mushrooms daily, about half a cup or less, could also be really beneficial for longevity. So here's a little eating plan of what we can do. So intermittent fasting. So we have in our tradition the Sunnah fast, where you fast twice per week. But we want to make sure it's a healthy fast, my friends. What are we breaking our fast with, and what are we starting our fast with is really key. So watch those portion sizes. When it's not Ramadan, when it's other times of the year, other days, trying to have like a block of time, right, from your last meal to your first meal of the day. So doing like a 12-hour fast, right? Maybe you stop eating at 7 p.m. and you don't eat again until 7 a.m. Again, those with diabetes, please check your practitioner or any other health conditions, but just trying to have a gap. A lot of times nighttime snacking can really do us in terms of affecting our blood sugars, weight, and so much more. Now, if you're not fasting, space those meals and snacks. So kind of give yourself like a 4 to 6 hour break. If you're obviously hungry before that time, please eat. Don't say, oh, I have to wait till 4 hours, but you're starving. Please eat. Listen to your body. But snacks are not a must, right? Only snack if you're truly hungry, and only snack also, again, if you have diabetes. Those are the differences there. Be more mindful of our foods, slow it down, really chew properly. That helps with satiation as well. Listen to hunger cues. Am I really hungry? Or am I just, watching TV, then I see some ad? Or am I, walking by someplace and I smell these nice smells? That can trigger hunger that necessarily is not real physical hunger. And hunger can a lot of times be mental too, right? We're stressed, we're upset, we're happy, we're sad. That can also cause us to eat when we're not necessarily hungry. So listen to our body, not our mind, our stomach, right? Our gut. Try to eat those large meals earlier on in the day, and try to stop eating earlier at night. So whatever your bedtime is, definitely cut your food 2 to 3 hours before the bedtime. We want to make sure we're getting those balanced meals in. So follow that plate method. You want to make sure we're getting all foods in. We don't want to villainize carbs. Carbs are not bad. We want to look at the quality of those carbohydrates. That's what's key. You want to limit or avoid processed foods, and you want to make sure you're eating more plant-based. So this is my last slide. I know I'm out of time here, and I want to save some time for questions. So some strategies for good overall health to extend our longevity is move more, especially natural physical activity, right? Getting those steps in, right? Getting up every half hour. Actually, we've been talking for a while, so if you haven't gotten up, make sure you kind of get up and kind of stretch around a little bit. Try to manage your stress, which also includes social connection. Getting enough quality sleep. Ideally, we want to get about 7 to 9 hours. I know some people can get by with a little bit less, but how are you feeling, right? We really look at that in terms of restorative sleep. Gut health is important. Eat those less processed, wholesome foods, preferably more plant-based. Get more plants in our life. Watch your portions, right? Get that 9-inch plate. Eat slowly. Don't drink your calories. A lot of times our calories come from our drinks. So just because it's juice, just because it's fresh orange juice from your tree outside, that's nice and everything, but watch how much you're having. A lot of these smoothies and protein drinks, be careful again of the sugars and calories in that. Plan your meals, and then keep track of what you're eating and drinking to kind of to see what effect that they are having in the body. So with that said, everyone, thank you everyone for your patience. And now I'm open to questions here. I think we have some time here. So I see in the chat box, what is a vegetable centric? So vegetables, if you think back to the plate method, let me go back to the plate. So if you look at the plate method, actually 75% of that plate is plants. Oops, I'm going the wrong direction. Where am I going, everybody? Sorry, everybody. I'm gonna go back to the plate. So it's only 1/4 of our plate that is actually protein, which could be meat, but 75% of our plate is considered to be plants, right? So we have half as vegetables, and that 1/4 is the whole grains and the starchy vegetables. So 75% is actually plant-based. So that would be considered vegetable centric. And yes, I will share the breakfast template. What is the difference between steel cut oatmeal and Quaker oats? So for Quaker oats, those are usually rolled oats, and you want to make sure that they're old fashioned. And the only difference between the steel cut oats and the rolled oats is the way that they're kind of minimally processed. So steel cut oats are more cylindrical, they're more crunchy. Those you do need to cook, right? The old fashioned oats, right, are rolled. So those are the type of oats that you can make overnight oats with, where you just kind of, put your liquid in, whatever your milk is, you can throw yogurt in there, you can have your oats, and you can put it in the fridge. And this is actually a nice suhoor idea, is you can make the overnight oats. So again, oats, your milk of choice, throw some Greek yogurt in there for protein, right? You can do a little of nut butters in there as well. And you let that, you sit that in the fridge overnight. And then when it's suhoor time, just stir it, add your fruit, add your nuts. And that could be a nice balanced suhoor. Yeah. My opinion on protein and fiber shakes. So protein shakes, just be careful, right? Reason being, a lot of these protein shakes can be high in sugar. They can be high in other processed ingredients. So the less ingredients, the better would be ideal. And do you really need to have that protein shake? That's also key. If you're eating well throughout the day, for most of us, we're getting insufficient protein. But if you want to use it as a backup, right? There are brands that, again, have less ingredients. And when you're looking for protein, you ideally want to see 20 grams or more. Fiber shakes, again, same thing. If you're eating well, you're getting your fruits and vegetables in, we should be good fiber-wise. But if you're having issues with constipation, talk to your doctor. Then in that case, like a Benefiber or a Metamucil, those type of supplements could be helpful. But first, we always want to try to do it through the foods. Okay, what did you mention as anti-inflammatory? So anti-inflammatory things would be like turmeric. Turmeric is a big anti-inflammatory spice. We got turmeric, you can do ginger, increased fruits and vegetables, right? Whole grains are anti-inflammatory. Green tea is can be anti-inflammatory. Herbs, right? Things like rosemary, basil, marjoram, all these type of herbs and spices are really anti-inflammatory. Making sure that we're getting in movement, right? Movement can be anti-inflammatory, and also getting enough sleep. Sleep and stress management can affect our inflammation. Is 1 teaspoon of honey equal to 1 teaspoon of sugar? Roughly, yes. I believe so. I'm trying to think of the grams. Roughly, yes. Cheese and apple with few walnuts as a snack, your opinion. Yes, that's fine. Just how much cheese are you eating though, right? So if you're having like a 1 ounce, maybe you're having like a string cheese is lower in fat. So usually I would recommend that. With apples and walnuts, yes, that would be a great snack.
I have a question. Can I speak?
Yes, go ahead.
How about jaggery? Jaggery, the cane.
Yeah, that's still sugar. That's still considered a sugar. So that isn't something that we would have large amounts of. But yeah, if you want to use that, that's fine. But this is the thing. I just want to remind everyone. Everyone always asks me, what's a good sugar? What sugar should I have? And I usually say none. But that's hard. So pick whatever sugar you can have that you have a little bit less. Like if I only put a little bit of honey into my tea and that's good, I don't need any more, then that's fine. But if you're like, no, I need a lot of honey, right? Then maybe you switch over into something that isn't that you're not using as much. So maybe you use a little bit of less, regular sugar. So whatever you can use the least amount of, and this is something that we can train our palate. We're very used to sugary foods because if we're eating too much sugar, our body gets used to that. And a lot of these artificial sweeteners are 250 to 10,000 times sweeter than sugar. So if we're having Splenda and the stevia all the time, this can really affect our taste buds negatively. So we want to kind of wean as much as possible off of that. And if we need to use it, just use a small amount. But unfortunately, there is no like good healthy sugar because it's not.
At least it's changed the taste of the tea, and you are able. It's
Yes, I'm with you on that. So we want something in our tea, but what you can also do is you can also throw in a cinnamon stick. That can also help too. But if that's your thing, if you're like, look, I love sugar in my tea, this is my only thing, I don't really eat desserts, I don't really eat a lot of sweets, then that's fine. Remember, we're trying to limit our sugar for women to 6.5 teaspoons or less per day. Can we have too much green tea? Yes. So you don't want to go overboard with the green tea. What's really helpful to get the benefits of green tea is having matcha green tea. So matcha green tea is like that powder. So it's like 1 cup of matcha green tea is equivalent to like 10 cups of green tea, but not the latte. So when we add milk into our teas, it actually negatively affects polyphenols that we get from the teas. So try not to add milk to, your tea. I know everyone, for many of us, including myself, we love our chai with the milk. But I'm just saying, if you're having like green tea and things like that, try to avoid the milk in there. Someone might say,
Sorry.
Huh?
How about cottage cheese? Is how much we can eat cottage cheese?
Cottage cheese is a great source of protein. I actually do recommend that. There actually are brands of cottage cheese that have probiotics, so look for that. There is a brand called Good Culture. Good Culture, that brand of cottage cheese has probiotics. So when you're buying cottage cheese, look for that. Knudsen unfortunately doesn't, unless they change their formulation. But it's a good source of protein, but watch out because it's also high in sodium. So for those of you who are watching your sodium, you have, any sort of restrictions, just watch the sodium on that. Sodium recommendation per day is about 2,400 milligrams. I'll put it in the chat box. 2,400 milligrams of sodium is
how many teaspoons are they?
that's about 2,400 milligrams sodium per day. So just to give you an idea, 1 teaspoon of salt has 2,000 milligrams of sodium. So a little bit less than that. Now, cottage cheese is usually on the higher side. Now, if you're just having cottage cheese and fruit, let's suppose that's your breakfast. I'm just having cottage cheese and fruit, nothing else salty, then that's fine. But if you're having like, cheese, omelet, and, then your cottage cheese and lots of other salty foods, then we want to watch how much that we're having. But cottage cheese is a great source of protein.
How about the paneer? If you are from
Yeah, that's
the paneer that we make at the cheese, we call it cheese.
Yeah.
I don't know what
Yeah, no,
name it has it in.
Yeah, that would be fine. But again, just be careful with some of the amounts, right? It's not going to be high in probiotic, but it could be, a good source of protein.
Protein.
I'm just going to turn really quickly to the questions in the chat box. Okay.
Tofu is also there.
So someone mentions, I do use monk fruit carefully, sometimes 1 half teaspoon. Okay, great. Yeah, monk fruit is one of the better ones. Some of our seniors have to gain weight. What do you recommend for healthy weight gain? Great question. So for those that have to gain weight, get those healthy fats in. Get those avocados. Add a little bit more olive oil into your food. Have more nuts and seeds. So you want to increase the calories through those healthy fats, and you just want to try to eat more. So you would be eating every couple of hours. Okay, are plant-based milks okay? It depends. Depends on the milk. I'm going to be honest, a lot of these plant-based milks, like oat milk, for instance, have a lot of added sugars and a lot of processed added ingredients that aren't necessarily, I would say, good for the long term. So if you're going to do plant-based, and a lot of these plant-based milks, by the way, don't have that much protein. So for example, some of the recommendations might be, for example, soy milk. If you're doing soy milk, you want it to be organic. You want it to be non-GMO, and you want it to be plain. I know some people are a little bit wary of soy. That could be a whole separate conversation. There's also almond milk, but you want to make sure there's calcium in the almond milk, right? But almond milk doesn't have a lot of protein, so you want to make sure you're getting other sources of the protein with that meal. So if you're like, well, I'm going to have oats and I'm going to add almond milk, you're not getting any protein in there. Then you would maybe want to have a boiled egg with it, or maybe you want to have some nuts in it or peanut butter, but just keep that in mind. Oat milk is okay here and there, but oat milk, I'm going to be honest, is not something I would recommend to have on a regular basis in your kitchen at home because it is really processed. There's hemp milk, there's different nut milks, pea protein milk. Those are okay, but usually milks, the reason that we're consuming those milks is for calcium. So that's what you want to make sure it's there for. In cheese category, which one is better sometimes? So the low-fat cheeses, like for example, like the mozzarella cheese from partly skim milk. Or other cheeses are okay too, but just have a small amount. It's very easy to eat a lot of cheese, so just kind of keep it to like an ounce, right? Which is like a little lipstick tube. What brand of cottage cheese did you recommend? The Good Culture. Good Culture. Coconut water is good for electrolytes. So if you want to drink that during Ramadan, that's a really nice way to hydrate. So you can do that. So that would be good. That'd be fine. Any other verbal questions? We're a little bit over time. I don't know, Zainab, what our timeline is.
Yes, we should wrap up. It looks like a lot of great questions. I kind of don't want everyone's questions answered because, it's always sometimes, those little golden nuggets. But Roohe, are you able to stop sharing your screen for a little bit, if you don't mind? So you can see the big screen. Okay, perfect. Okay, wonderful.
We had it like this.
Thank you so much, Roohe, for your insight. There were so many golden nuggets today. I loved every little bit shared. I think we had a very diverse audience as well from all age groups, all backgrounds. So I hope we answered all your questions. We will be sharing this recording on our YouTube page. So if you haven't subscribed to Olive YouTube, please make sure you subscribe. Just look Olive Community Services. If you have not attended Olive programs, please register. Go to our website, www.olivecs.org. We have programs with Roohe once a month in Upland. I think next month we might be doing something about stress, it looks like, in Ramadan. And so if you live in the IE area, please go ahead and share with people, reach out to us. Happy to direct you. So thank you again. Sorry for going 5 minutes over, but great information. And I hope everyone has a great time rest of this week. Stay safe out there. Eat healthy.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Enjoy.
We enjoyed
Bye-bye. Thank
all the
you.
information
Thank you, Roohe.
shared with us.
Olive Community Services is a 501c3 nonprofit organization based in Southern California that provides culturally appropriate services to seniors, their family, and the community. Through its physical and virtual interactive programs, Olive engages participants in a variety of ways that promotes health and well-being. To learn more about Olive Community Services, to get involved, or to make a donation, please visit www.olivecs.org or email info@olivecs.org. Be a change maker, and together, let's live, learn, and thrive.